nothing ever starts in perfection. We don't come out of the womb knowing how to be, master business coaches and marketing gurus and podcasters, right? So if you're thinking of starting a business, just take the first step and get your feet wet. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
I'm Katie.
I'm Anna.
She's a psychotherapist.
And she runs a photography empire. Together we make music and we podcast
To encourage ourselves
and you
to do the things that scare us most.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Doing Scary Things podcast. Today, Katie and I talk with the delightful Melisa Celikel. She's a small business consultant in San Diego, California. Melisa is an awesome consultant. She's a master of organization, and we loved hearing from her about her own journey from making her way in the corporate world to getting her feet wet, launching her own businesses, and then pivoting her way to new adventures. She's super analytical and wildly creative. We were so inspired by Melisa, and we know you will be too.
So my name is Melisa Celikel. I own a company here in San Diego, California called Make Sht Happen, LLC. It's SHT, so it's technically not a swear word, but it used to stand for Spiritual Home Transformations when I was specifically running a professional home organization business. And now it's more of a simplify, hustle, and transform consulting side for small business owners.
Kind of tell us about that process of how that transformed from one to the other.
Yeah, so it was definitely a big pivot, a big rebrand. It's always tough, starting into entrepreneurship and not necessarily knowing the direction you might take. There's so many different paths and avenues, and I do believe in the power of the pivot where, if you feel like something is maybe out of alignment or not what you thought it was going to be, maybe you're 6 months or a year into it, it's definitely important to recognize those feelings within you and realize when it's time to make a change. So it was a learning experience, but no regrets. I'm super happy where I ended up.
That's awesome. Do you find that people, maybe your clients or even yourself in your own story, do you find that there's kind of fear associated with that, like kind of admitting, oh, something's not working here?
Definitely, yeah. And I think, in my case, I can get more into my background, but when I left my corporate career of 15 years working for Fortune 500 companies, I was scared to death because I didn't have a degree in business. I had never been an entrepreneur, never started even like a lemonade stand or anything like that. And my parents are academics. So my dad's a PhD in molecular biophysics, and my mom is a master's in special education research. So
wow.
They were like, what are you doing? And, it was a journey for sure. But it was cool to see how I kind of still stayed with that corporate mentality and really created like a job for myself. And then about a year into it, I was like, oh my gosh, I just literally created a job where I have a uniform and a schedule. And I realized I built something I kind of hated. So it was a matter of looking at that and changing it.
Yeah. Do you feel like that was kind of a natural way it developed because that's what you knew already?
Yeah, I think we hold on to, I call them anchors. We hold on to the anchors of what we're taught and what's modeled to us. My degree's in sociology, so no stranger to, human behavior and human performance in that way. And I think I just kind of, it was familiar. And so I was like, okay, I need a schedule and I need a uniform and I need to run my business this way. But really, entrepreneurship is kind of like a wild game. You can do really kind of whatever you want these days. So I had to realize and sort of check myself and say, hold on, I built a business I don't like. So let me fire myself and go get a new job, so to speak.
You're fired. I love it.
That's incredible. And I think, as scary as it is to start the first time, how scary that must have been to say, actually, let's pause. I don't like this, and I believe I can do it better.
Yeah.
And what courage that must have taken.
Yeah, and it's a lot of, I mean, it's such a woo-woo-y term, but it's a lot of soul searching, and it's a lot of trying to find yourself through the process. And I think entrepreneurship really for me has been the best learning experience. You know, no matter how many self-help books I read or retreats I went on or tapes I listened to, or, you know, all those things that we do to quote unquote find ourselves. That's sort of like being in the classroom to me, where, you know, you can be learning all of these things. Say you're going to school to be a vet and you're learning all these textbook terms about being a veterinarian, and you know, you're in the classroom, but until you get down to actually, say, performing surgery on a dog, you're like, okay, it's not really real, you know? So I think entrepreneurship for me was that. It was taking those principles from the classroom and really just being thrown into the fire.
Yeah, well, and like you said, your parents are from academic backgrounds. So that's kind of interesting to me too, that it is, I mean, entrepreneurship is the Wild West by itself, but it was a really Wild West for you because I imagine, right, your background was totally different and probably the messages from them were different. So can you tell us a little more about your background?
Yeah, definitely. So my dad is from Turkey, and I have dual citizenship in Turkey. So that's kind of another iron in the fire where, you know, being a first-generation American child coming from an immigrant family, there's even more pressure, I feel like, to live the American dream and succeed and have that, you know, marriage by 30 and white picket fence and the corporate salary and all the benefits and the pension. And, you know, that was definitely my dad's dream for me. So it took a lot to get his buy-in, so to speak, on, you know, hey, I'm going to be fine. I'm not going to be homeless, you know, like this is going to work. And it did, you know, and he sees that success now. And my favorite moment, honestly, in the past, you know, over 2 years of this has been he really hasn't assimilated into American culture. He doesn't really want to, and it's fine because that makes him kooky in his own way. He doesn't have a cell phone. He never has. He doesn't have a TV. He doesn't have Wi-Fi at his house. He lives very simply. And
bravo.
Right. And he does have a computer and, you know, Wi-Fi and everything at his job. He's a research scientist. So one day I got this call and he goes, he checks Market Watch every day. It's like a news source. He was looking at Market Watch, and I was on Market Watch. I was featured on there for something. And he calls me and he goes, I see your face with some man. Who is this man on Market Watch? And it was my boyfriend, and it was an article about how we're in business together and stuff like that. But it was hilarious because, well, typical Turkish father, you know, Middle Eastern father. Who is this man you are with, you know?
Yeah. But, that's hilarious.
I just thought it was so cool because I think it hit him that I am actually a business owner and I am actually doing big things in the world. Yeah. And I don't think I think he thought it was just like my lemonade stand. You know, I don't think he realized I'm actually making shit happen.
Right.
Yeah. I love that. That must have been such a proud moment for you. Parents have the best intentions, right? But they worry for their kids, and they are seeing the world through their own lens, you know? And so how cool that you could say, actually, I'm going to make my own path and do my own thing. Did that ever cause any doubt in you where you question yourself?
For sure. Yeah, it was tough. You know, it was tough to sort of cut those anchors and those limiting beliefs that had been what I thought, you know, holding me back. Really, the doubt came from, okay, can I do this? I had $30,000 saved before I left my corporate job, and I had already validated my market with the professional home organization business, where I was booked for probably like 5 weekends out, you know, Saturdays and Sundays. I was doing this on the side. And so by the time that I got booked out, by the time that I had all that saved, I was like, okay, it's time to take the leap and go. And that, you know, definitely helped me feel more safe. But the mental doubt was still there as far as, can this work? Am I going to fall on my butt and, you know, not be able to get back up? But that's sort of the risk I think you have to take to do anything big in the world.
Yeah, you kind of have to be right out there on the edge at some point.
Well, tell us what you do now and what this business has grown into.
Yeah, so I started the professional home organization business. What I realized was along the way, the joy that it was actually sparking, haha joke, Marie,
I got it. I got that one.
Marie Kondo joke there. The joy that it was sparking for me actually came from teaching humans how to be more productive, how to manage their time more effectively, how to live more simply, how to declutter not only their physical stuff, but declutter certain mindsets that weren't serving them anymore, declutter certain people in their life that were too toxic, declutter their calendar obligations. There's so many ways that decluttering and minimalism can fill into other areas of life. And what I noticed was most of my client base were female entrepreneurs, or if not entrepreneurs, heavy hitters in business. So, these are top executives. You're going to their house. I'm here in San Diego. I'm going to multi-million-dollar mansions, and there's all kinds of Teslas and crazy cars,
Yes.
in the front drive.
I love San Diego.
Yeah, no,
That's
and
awesome.
it's a beautiful place. I'm born and raised here, and I'm used to it. I grew up on a golf course. Like, I know the drill, right? But I noticed that I was helping these women that needed more than just help in their home, and they actually needed help in their business. So it was definitely a pivot point, like I mentioned, where I didn't want to sit in somebody's garage and sort through old Christmas decorations covered in cobwebs and sometimes rat poop, right? And that was the job that I had built for myself, And so what I did was I hired 4 women. So I created an online course to teach women how to build a business like I did, because so many people were asking me, how are you having this success? I helped over 250 families in 2018 alone. So I was basically working sessions like almost every single day. And I kept getting questions. So I created this online course, taught a bunch of women how to create their own business. 4 of them out of the many that went through the course happened to be in San Diego. So I said, hey, I'm still getting requests to do this stuff. I don't want to do this anymore. Do you guys want to be part of my program? And I was paying them as independent contractors. So that was how it pivoted, where I still had so many clients that loved me and wanted the service, but also I didn't want to do it anymore. So,
Well, I love that's such a strategic and smart way to fire yourself, right?
mm-hmm.
You didn't simply fire yourself. You kept that business going. Is it still going today?
It's not as of January 1st, 2020, because California contractor laws have significantly changed.
Oh,
so
man.
We're currently experiencing a ton of crazy stuff with Uber and Lyft out here, because those are all contractors. So California is a very fun legal place to live sometimes.
Tumultuous, to say the least.
Yeah, but they've kind of left the nest, so to speak. They've really built up their own clientele now. So I felt like Mama Bird could kind of push them out and say, okay, you're on your own.
That's really cool. Sounds like it worked out.
I'm curious, when you were working with women with their home, like you said, their Christmas ornaments and organizing their homes. My first question is, was that ever hard to do? Because I know sometimes that stuff can be sentimental, right? And did you ever have to kind of come in and like motivate them or talk them through that? And then second, does that parallel with the work you're doing now of really empowering them to start businesses, or tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I would say 90% of decluttering somebody's home is mindset. So it was constantly, why are you holding on to this? What memory does this spark for you? Using my NLP certification, using my degree in sociology, using my background in human resources. I had people that would cry over failed marriages, and yet they're still holding on to their bouquet dried flowers and their wedding dress, from 20 years ago.
Wow.
Or you have people with sometimes passed away. I just got chills. I actually, this is kind of a crazy story, but I actually was organizing somebody's jewelry box, and she had a little bag that had kind of burst open, and it was actually her father's ashes, part of her father's ashes.
Whoops.
That were, yep. Well, and it,
Oh my gosh.
thank God it was, we made a big laugh about it, and,
Yeah.
I essentially had her dad all over my hand, and we were just cracking up. And it was a moment where there were tears and there were laughs, and those are the special moments where, you really bond with a client when you're working one-on-one with them in their home with the sentimental kind of tough stuff. So yes, that was every single client, every single day. It was never like, I wasn't one of those organizers, Khloe Kardashian has, where it's like, go into the pantry and just make it pretty. It was actually, more of like, I called it at the time clutter coaching, because you're actually coaching them through each item.
Yeah, and how to actually, this may sound harsh, but like fix the problem, right?
Right.
Like you don't want to have clutter again in a year. you know?
Exactly. And so many people thought that that's what I did. They thought that that's what organization was. Like, oh, she's just going to go down to Target and get some of those big clear bins and slap some labels on them and we'll be good to go. And that's totally not what it is.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of them felt like I was more than just, quote unquote, the help.
Right.
And I was more like a partner in their success.
Yeah.
So that leads to your second question. So yes, as a business strategist or productivity consultant or whatever you want to call me, that's where I help people streamline and systematize their businesses. So not just professional organizers. I created the course and, that still runs on in the background. But the actual business consulting side of it is my program called Profitably Productive. So it's teaching business owners, okay, if you're not turning a profit, if you're not in love with your business, what's wrong? How can we declutter the stuff that we don't need to make room for the stuff that does matter?
That's so cool.
Yeah. I can definitely see that as the larger picture, from decluttering homes to like how all of that applies in like this larger scale.
For sure. Yeah. And it took me a long time, I think, to realize what I was doing. I just knew that like the home organization side wasn't really serving me anymore. And so it took me a while to wrap my head around why I was pivoting. Probably a good year for me to look back and go, oh, that makes sense. What? Sometimes we get so in the weeds, I think, with our own lives and our own businesses that it's hard to see, the forest for the trees.
Right.
So.
Well, and I feel like that is such a common experience for people who have the guts to, first of all, admit that something's not working, right? And that process of kind of understanding the pivot, a lot of times it doesn't resolve until after it's kind of said and done. So I'm wondering how often you see that in your clients too, where you recognize that they're in that and you're like, I know that because I had that same process.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's so important when you're in business, because most of the time you're spending your own money unless you have seed funding and venture capitalists investing in you. But most of the time, every single dollar, every single minute counts. And so I think a lot of times people get sucked into the things that don't matter. They don't really have an ROI. They were told by some, life coach that they needed this, or they were told by some marketing guru that they needed that funnel, or they needed this email marketing thing, or they went to some conference and thought they needed to, do a webinar and write a self-published Amazon book. And it's like, I see people just running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And I'm like, okay, calm down. Take a step back. Let's strategize. Let's not just throw spaghetti at the wall and hope that it's going to stick and we're going to make money. We have to actually come into this with a strategic plan. And that totally relates to my background, consulting for those Fortune 500 companies, where I can now meld all these different worlds that I live in all into one business.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. And I think it's really helpful, because I know that's one of my personal pet peeves, is just seeing these 5 steps to success. We're all going to do the same thing and we're all going to have the same results. And I'm just like, it doesn't work that way. First you have to find the thing that it really is going to light you on fire and bring you joy and fulfillment. It would help to think about it strategically, like you're saying, and bring your unique gifts to it. So I think that's a really beautiful vision.
It sounds like a very creative approach too.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're saying, it's multidisciplinary and you're pulling from all these experiences you've had.
Creative is an interesting word for me, because I, on those tests I've done, obviously with sociology degree and HR, I've done, DISC and PAEI and Strength Finders and Myers-Briggs, and there's so many things that you can go through. I'm very analytical. I'm very logical. You know, you can probably tell just in the way I talk. I'm kind of like intense, like, okay, let's get this done, you know. But it's taken me a while to realize that I am very creative, but in a different way. You know, I'm like strategically creative. I'm not creative like I'm going to go paint in my garage and light a candle. Like, I'm not that person at all.
Yes.
But I'm creative in finding, I think, innovative ways to make things happen.
I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's an important journey. I think it's an important piece to realize. One of the things we're really passionate about is telling everybody that everybody's creative, you know, but we obviously have to recognize that it looks different for different people.
Right.
And I think unlocking that for yourself and like the ways you can bring your own creativity to the table is super important.
It was a cool, like, moment when I was like, oh, maybe I
Yes.
am. I mean, my boyfriend is a photographer, videographer. We own a creative agency together. That's another whole story. That's another episode. But he is so creative. Like, if you look at our charts, even just on those simple creativity tests you can take online, I'm like way over here to the left on logic, and then he's way over here to the right on creativity. So the two of us together is a great team. Sometimes we drive each other nuts, but it's cool. It's cool. Like, the opposites attract kind of thing.
They really do, and for good reason. But I think it's so interesting how some of those tests are structured like that, how logic and creativity are separate. I mean, just because I have a psychology background, and even just with my like limited knowledge of psychometrics, like that's fascinating to me because most of the creativity research in psychology is very analytical in nature. Like, the way that creativity is measured is like, how many unique solutions can someone come up with in this amount of time?
Right.
What's the complexity of their solutions or something? It's not like how well can they paint this picture at all. Like,
Right.
It's a very measurable, logical.
For sure. And it, you know, when you look at brain tests, like say somebody's on like a EKG machine or something, and you're looking at, okay, what's sparking, what's lighting up, which areas of the brain. They are related. They're like right next to each other. So it's, I don't know, it's weird.
Yeah.
But yes, everybody's creative. You heard it from me. the most logical, analytical human on the planet.
Yes.
I'm like a robot sometimes, but you know, we joke that we're robots in love. So
I love that.
I love it. And I love it even more that this came up and we didn't prep you for this.
Yeah.
Because we have that little hidden agenda of making sure everybody knows they can tap into that.
Well, it is really cool to find you in the wild, a very analytically minded person who already has had this realization.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you just kind of said, like, it was a really cool moment when I realized that. And that's part of why we care about, you know, encouraging people with that information, because it's freeing. And it kind of says, like, you know, you're not excluded from this exclusive creative club. You're actually, like, you've always been in it. We're all in it. It's all for all of us. And, you know, I wonder how that plays in. Do you ever talk with your clients about creativity?
You know, I have my networking group that I run where we have usually about 30 to 50 people that come once a month and learn from different speakers, whether it's me or whether it's people that I know in the community that are experts in their field. And we really, I don't know, it's a really cool group that I have here in San Diego because there are so many networking groups and there are so many meetup groups, and so many of them are dubbed Creative Mornings and San Diego Creators Group. And, you know, I don't know if you guys know Tuesdays Together or Rising Tide Society. That's typically a group for creators. And, you know, it's very, we use that word so much.
Yeah.
But just because I'm creating maybe a business checklist or a business resource guide or a business to-do list for end-of-year, you know, wrap-ups and P&Ls and tax time and things like that. Just because I'm putting together stuff like that doesn't mean that I'm not creative, because I'm not creating, you know, a video or a photo production or things like that. So I didn't use that word in my group name specifically because I wanted people to feel like they could come if they weren't necessarily, you know, a calligraphy artist or like, you know, a wedding invite creator or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a beautiful point. And that's actually what kind of started me on this journey. And, you know, no offense to those people out there, because what I see it as is I think they're just misusing the word. And it's, that's fine. They haven't thought of it in that way. But I literally watched it tear an organization apart because they started a creative group. And what they thought was going to be a very inclusive thing, right? And like, oh, we're going to find our people. And what it actually did was nobody was sure who was allowed to go. And I literally, there was a girl who, she went on to be this like amazing costumer in LA, like amazingly creative, right? And I literally watched her say, I don't think I'm allowed to go. Like, I don't know if I'm invited, and that was just heartbreaking. And so, I like that you're keeping it more open because everybody is welcome, right? It takes all of us. It takes all of us in our unique giftings and just interests and passions to bring really exciting things to life.
Yeah, for sure. I think, especially with the term exclusivity, I like that you said that because I learned about inclusivity versus exclusivity a long, long time ago, probably like 15 years ago in college. And it stuck with me because you hear the words inclusive and you hear the word exclusive. Typically, you hear the word exclusive when you're, going on a VIP yacht experience, or you're at Bloomingdale's or something, and there's this exclusive giveaway
right?
For, Tory Burch bags or something, right?
Totally.
So that's typically how we hear those words. But when you think of it being, okay, how are we including everybody versus how are we excluding certain groups, certain types, certain people, it really changes your mindset about how you use those words. And I think I like that you said, people felt like they were maybe excluded because those groups sometimes, in my experience, that's why I started my own group, because I felt like I didn't fit in.
Yeah.
Felt like I was maybe not fitting in, not finding my tribe like I thought I was going to. And instead I ended up feeling excluded. So, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic that probably the people who named the group that are thinking, oh, people are going to identify with this and come, and they don't really consider that flip side of the fact that, like, in society, it seems that we have this kind of misunderstanding of creativity, and that winds up meaning a lot of people exclude themselves from it, right? And I mean, I'm sure also people in the group may exclude someone that doesn't seem that, to be just like them. Like, there's always that, like, human behavior, right? But I think more than anything, it quits before it begins, because we do exclude ourselves if we don't understand that we're creative, and most of us don't.
Yeah.
Well, and we're all on a journey, and I'm sure you see this with entrepreneurship all the time. It's like we see our potential, maybe, we have an idea. We want to go down this path. We want to become something, right? We want to become a writer. We want to become this or this. But it's like that really fine line of like when we allow ourselves to call ourselves that, Yeah. Because we don't necessarily have a certificate that says it, right? Like, I am a writer now, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the creativity piece is hard for some people who don't know if they're allowed to be creative or to call themselves that. Anyway, thanks for chatting about that with us.
It's like one of our favorite subjects. We're like, ooh,
we get really excited about it. So tell me about what you're working on currently, and is there anything that is kind of scaring you or intimidating you in your current work?
Yeah, so I actually kind of started to burn out of the one-on-one consulting where it was the long, 3-month, 6-month programs where I was working with one business owner and typically a solopreneur, meaning they don't have a team, they don't have a brick and mortar that they go into every day and manage an operation with a staff. After the pivot from home organizing to becoming an online course creator to then becoming a one-on-one B2B consultant, I pivoted again. Awesome. And I actually work full-time now for a management consulting firm, but all 8 of my clients are $1 million businesses. Wow. So one of the businesses I was out at yesterday on a visit, made $30 million in gross revenue last year. $30 million. So this is, moving from people that I was helping here just locally in San Diego one-on-one, meeting every week at the local coffee shop, being sort of an accountability partner for them, strategizing their next moves. A lot of those business owners were in the red. Maybe they hadn't made any money in their business, which is super common for a solopreneur to experience, or maybe they had only ever grossed, $30,000. And so I took the opportunity to partner with this company. I've known the owners for over 10 years, and they offered me a job a long time ago. And so I finally came back to them. I said, okay, I'll accept.
Nice. Awesome.
And I love it. I absolutely love it. And the difference is I'm not in a corporate environment. I don't have a desk at an office that I go to Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So I think for a long time, I was like, oh, screw the man. I'm never going back to a job. And, I worked so hard to get here and be an entrepreneur. And, we use that word so much. You look at Instagram bios and it's everybody and their mother's an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
So I was scared, definitely, to go back to a JOB.
Yeah.
But it's not a JOB, and I knew it wasn't going to be because I know the people that started it. It's a very small startup company, but we have amazing, amazing, amazing clients. And so I still get to do what I was doing with solopreneurs. And I still do. I still have my profitably productive program for a select few on the side. Obviously, my time is limited at this point, so I don't take as many clients as I used to. But it's been amazing. It's been awesome to see how I can do things bigger. And stop playing so small, like if I have these talents and I'm helping these small business owners, great, but it was more of like a charity thing for me, honestly. And so now I'm getting to kind of run with the big dogs again.
I think that's a really inspiring story because, like you said, we were a little afraid to go back to a job. So I think that was brave that you took a chance, but also, you were taking your options and saying, okay, I can see how this is going to be different. This is going to work for me. I really admire that.
Yeah, it's like a better fit, like a way better fit, it sounds like, which is great. And I felt the same way, like, oh my gosh, that's so brave, because I think when you have the chutzpah to like leave a corporate or sort of a more socially traditional kind of work setting, then it can feel like failure, or like people are going to perceive like, oh, it didn't work out for you or something, right? Like if you then go back to a similar setting. So did you have any like conversations that you had to field with the people around you about it?
Definitely. Yeah. And I think the term that comes to mind is like selling out. We hear like, oh, are you a sellout now?
I don't like that.
And I never heard that. We're always our own worst critics, and we're always hardest on ourselves. And I think, I was making up this big bad monster in my head, like where I was literally, I had the job offer in my hand and I was like, oh, do I take this or not? And I asked for about a week to fully, digest everything. And I obviously came to the decision to accept, which 100% no regrets, super excited, no regrets.
No regrets.
Yeah. No regrets.
Yes.
But yeah, I thought it was going to be a bigger deal than it actually was. I don't say this in a mean way. I say this in a way to kind of give people perspective, but nobody's really paying attention to your stuff. It's like when you're in elementary school and you're out of clean clothes and you're like, well, I wore that last Friday. And like, does anybody in that elementary school class know what you wore last Friday, or even give two hoots what you wore last Friday? No. And so we build up these things in our heads where we become so insecure over what other people might be thinking. Right. And we're assuming that they're, looking at our every move. It's like Instagram content, I'll repurpose posts. And I'm like, well, I posted that 6 months ago. Do you really think anyone remembers what I posted 6 months ago, or even read the caption,
Right.
And I think it's like, do what works for you. Stop caring so much about what other people might be thinking, because they're probably not even thinking.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I was thinking about that because Anna said that, like, what will people think? And that's such a common thing. It holds so many people back, and we could name a list of fears, right? That we're just imagining, like you said, like nobody actually said this to me. Nobody called me a sellout. They're probably like jealous, you know, like how did she get that job?
Totally.
Yeah, and there's been a few of those. Honestly, there's been more of those than there's been, you know, quote unquote haters, so to speak, right? There's definitely been more of the, well, I wish I had that skill set, and you know, or you know, how did you get that, and yada yada.
I love that.
Yeah.
So that's good advice.
Yeah, and there's the internal side of it too. Like when you have worked hard to become more independent or to kind of, you know, have the work-life balance or lifestyle that works the best for you, and then you change it back to something that looks more similar to what felt so toxic before. I imagine you have to figure that out internally first, right? Before you even really care about what other people think. It's like, well, do I feel like a sellout? Like, am I selling out? Because if you know that you're not, then it's a little easier to deal with what, you know, the hypothetical, what other people might think. But if you're not sure, then you really have to spend some time with that too.
And I think it's also like, I mean, definitely not PTSD, but PTSD in the way of like, oh, shoot, I have a boss and I have to do stuff and I'm held accountable. Yeah. You know, I'm held accountable to get this paycheck, and just the simple, like, you're following somebody else's rules and standards and no longer working from home in your PJs and, you know, eating ice cream at noon on a Tuesday if you feel like it, you know. So I think it was shedding those limiting beliefs that I had created for myself, that the you know, bad experiences that I might have had at my past corporate jobs were going to parlay into this job, and they truly have not. So, you know, like, again, with making up stories in our heads, it's like, okay, there's what actually is true, and then there's what our ego is telling us and trying to protect us from. So
it's not a secret, but I would call it more like a counterintuitive truth that you can actually carry the freedom with you. You know, you can carry 100% of that Tuesday afternoon ice cream style freedom with you to a job that you still have to answer to someone else at, you know?
Yep.
But I think it's hard to wrap our minds around that.
Yeah.
Well, and here, I mean, I'm here. I'm on the clock technically at work. Obviously, it's a salary position, and I kind of just do whatever the F I want anyway, because that's just the type of person that I am. But here I am, you know, chatting with you all, and it's great because I know that I'm in an environment where we even have a podcast room. That's where I am right now. And my boss is like, oh yeah, go, do you, you know, like it. There's balance. There's ways to find what you need in every single job.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. And then what I'm hearing is that you know, I think each of these experiences taught you a lot about yourself and what you're really good at and what you don't want to do. And then you're bringing that with you. So, it's going to be a great experience because of that. I just appreciate your time so much. There's one question we usually ask at the end. So if anybody's out there and they're just so inspired by your talk and they feel like, I have this idea and maybe I could do that too. Is there like a first step that you maybe would encourage them to take for themselves?
I would say action cures fear. So take the messy action. Your first video that you might put on YouTube is going to suck, and so are the 10 videos following. Your first podcast episode is going to be horrible, and then you'll figure it out by maybe episode 15. Nothing ever starts in perfection. We don't come out of the womb knowing how to be, master business coaches and marketing gurus and podcasters, right? So if you're thinking of starting a business, just take the first step and get your feet wet. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You pivot, you move on. Look at me. I've pivoted like 80,000 times.
Approximately.
Yes. And I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm better. I'm so much better than where I was about 2-3 years ago before I leapt into this journey, and I have no regrets.
No regrets. And I love that so much. We can see in your face, which sadly our listeners can't, but also hear in your voice that you're very joyful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Pivoting did not wear you down to a nub. It invigorated you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
That.
I think that's really encouraging. Okay, so I know you have a lot of services for people too. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram, so I'm at Let's Get You Organized on Instagram. My website is www.letsgetyouorganized.biz. And then I have a few courses, like I said, that still sort of run in the background. $7 clutter coaching course teaches you how to be a minimalist online. $197 professional organizers course. So that still does run for people that are maybe interested in starting their own home organization biz. And then a $67 profitably productive call. So even if you just want to jump on the phone with me and pick my brain about maybe a business idea you have, or you're at a point where maybe you want to pivot and you want to know what the heck to do, you can also pick my brain on one of those profitably productive calls.
Awesome.
That's super cool. Well, I really think everybody's going to be super inspired by you. So thank you so much for sharing your story.
Of course. And thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we connected.
Thanks for joining us today on the Doing Scary Things podcast. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe so you never miss one, leave a review, and share it with a friend. You can find our show notes and all kinds of other information at doingscarythings.com, as well as our new album, Whisper, under the band name Jasper and Jade. Until next time. Next time you're on a VIP yacht trip, just let us know. We'll meet you there.